Raise your hand if you're still feeling the effects of the Toronto Blue Jays losing the World Series. As an avid Toronto sports fan, I was distraught with the outcome and couldn't bring myself to talking about the Blue Jays without shedding a tear. What a magical season it was. They restored my love for the game of baseball, and they were the third most searched sports team on Google in 2025. Here to share his touching tribute to the Blue Jays and his journey in sports media is the one and only Andrew Stoeten. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here on Passion Projects today. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
I would love to get things started by finding where your passion for baseball came from.
That's a great question, honestly. I'm not even 100% sure. I remember I'm an elderly person now. I remember 1985, the Blue Jays. Like that was obviously a huge thing. Like when I was growing up, it was like basketball was not on the radar. Soccer wasn't really on the radar. It was very much, a hockey baseball country. And yeah, I don't know. My parents aren't big sports people. I would play like as a kid. But yeah, my dad would be like, yeah, he went to soccer games. Well, he grew up in the Netherlands and would has stories about that, but like came to Canada and was like, I don't understand hockey. I don't understand any of this stuff. So it definitely didn't come from him, which I know is a lot of people's story. But it was, it was just, that was just the thing you do. I grew up on a street in a different time where like a little dead end street had like 20 kids living on it. And you would just, if you want to go out and hang out with your friends, play outside, which everybody did all day, every day. This is, like Mark Twain stuff. It was, you're playing hockey, you're playing basketball, you're throwing the football around, and it just sort of, manifested from there. And it was, it was just such a bigger thing in that I would just a coincidence of time, like the Blue Jays sort of ascending in terms of they're not being like the expansion team and sort of becoming that club that would go to the playoffs, that would be in the pennant races, and that ultimately led to 92 and 93. And those happened when I was like 11 or 12, and so that's pretty powerful stuff. When and I think we see that a bit this year after the run. And Mark Shapiro just went to talk to the media the other week, the other day, and was talking about seeing kids playing catch in parks, and just how the success like that from the high profile team will sort of lead you to want to do stuff like that, and like really has a powerful impression on kids. So I suppose it's that, and I grew up in the Ken Griffey Jr. era. If I cast my gaze away from the Blue Jays, and that was that was cool, baseball cards and hockey cards, like all that sort of stuff. And so yeah, it just really grew out of that. It was just the thing to do. I don't know that it ever, I have other hobbies and passions and things that I get myself into, but that's one that is always, a real centering thing. And especially like growing up, it was just understood. You're watching the games, you're playing sports, you're a sports person.
It's so true, because I find, as you alluded to, my dad kind of put us into t-ball and baseball, and I think that's how my love for the game of baseball grew. It's my first love until the Raptors came into existence.
Yeah.
But I remember 92, 93, I was 7 at the time, my dad taking us to the parade and being able to witness that. And to your point, it felt like everyone was coming together. This 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, even my 4-year-old was so into it. Like, we were sitting and religiously watching the games, and him like understanding and like just telling me about the roster, who's playing today, who's not, who's gonna be who to look out for. It's so fascinating.
It's cool, and it makes me feel good. It's one of the few things, I mean, people think of sports in a sort of, it's like a frivolous kind of thing. It's obviously a huge industry, and it's meaningful and to people. But yeah, those are great reminders of like, I'm not doing something with my life that is actually frivolous. It's actually, it can be on a higher level. It can do stuff like that and bring people together. It's corny to say. I know people have been saying it all month, but it really did. It really does. It's, the people that I love, that I know do not, care about baseball, checking in, talking about the game, all that sort of stuff has been really, really amazing.
Well, I'll be remiss if I didn't ask you how you were feeling. I
Oh.
mean, it's been a little bit. I mean, I am still coming to terms with it, but I feel like slowly things are changing and I'm looking ahead to the next year, but I don't know, just still it still hurts. It still hurts.
Yeah, it does. I think it will for a long time. I I tried to like compartmentalize and shove that out of my brain, but I would be lying if I said that it didn't hurt and that didn't suck and that yeah, it's hard. I cannot imagine actively seeking out watching game 7 ever again in my life. Like
I
just
know.
too painful. Just so close. I mean, and it's like you have to balance that with how good you feel about the team and what a great ride it was and all of those things. But in the back of my mind, I'm always like, yeah, that's loser talk. You have to talk that way. When you lose like that, like it's yeah, that was a bad one. I mean, like I'm fine. I'm living my day to day just the same. It hasn't really affected my life that badly, but it's also like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not ready to think about playing games. And yet, yeah, like you say, we're already getting back into press conferences and looking into the off season. Like the GM meetings are coming up. Like the points on the off season calendar are starting to fall, and like the winter meetings are not that far away. Like stuff's happening. The roster's getting reshaped.
I'm already trying to plan my spring training and figure out a way to watch them while they're
Yeah.
in Florida.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely understand that, and I think there will be a lot of the same characters around, but a few key ones probably won't be, and that's going to be interesting. But it's also lovely to be in a place where you see what's possible. I think for a
Yeah.
long time, even though the Blue Jays had success, in terms of getting to the playoffs, and they had some good seasons in the Shapiro Atkins era, it's like this really sort of brought home that it is possible that these guys can do it, that the expectations can be higher, and I think that unlocks an element of fun to everything. I think when you go through a season thinking, well, they're just going to get bounced in the first round anyway,
Yeah,
that makes it a little bit of a more of a slog, right?
exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. So I want to know what inspired you to create the Bat Flip Substack?
Well, I mean, that's just a continuation of my long career doing this, right? Like I started doing Drunk Jays fans in I think 2006. I didn't know what I worked at a company that did mystery shopping, or secret shopping, which was really soul crushing of an exercise or an experience. Like nice enough people there, but the whole concept of it was like, we're going to send somebody in to pose as a real customer to like, report back to corporate what like the minimum wage people were, how they were doing their jobs, which is just not a nice thing to do. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it was very tilted towards, and I ran an editing department, which was like, because the people who did those shops came into, like, their reports would come into our department. We had to edit them for clarity and for for grammar and all that stuff, because I did creative writing at York, and so that
Shout out
was,
York. Me too. I
yes.
went there.
Oh, yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Oh man, before the subway too. So that was a slog.
Taking
Yeah.
those 2 buses to go to get to school.
I never needed to go to Downsview Station again in my life. Yeah. Thank you. No. But yeah, so that was the start of it, or well, like, that was what I was doing. But it also afforded me a lot of free time, because I was really good at my job and underpaid, and um, just it was an interesting work environment. We don't need to spend too much time on it, but it was also soul crushing because of that element of it. And so, uh, as I rose in that company, I ended up being able to, like, I would be the guy who was, instead of editing the reports, I was running the department. I was uh, writing the instructions for the shoppers to follow when they go to tattle on the
Mhm.
pizza guy, and so unless you were really really specifically looking over my shoulder, I'm just sitting there typing away, working on this all day. And yet at the same time, I was doing blogs about the Blue Jays, because I had this hockey fantasy like a Yahoo fantasy league, or maybe I don't know if it was partly that. It was partly we had, in like the pre-social media days, uh, there were we had like an email circle. It's like everybody would just reply all to people as a way to sort of chat with a bunch of, like, a big friend group, like 30 people, for throughout the day at our dumb jobs. And a friend of mine, Dustin, and I would like go off on tangents about, you know, how bad we thought Richard Griffin's latest article in the Star was, or stuff like, you know, stuff like that. And people eventually were just like, please stop, please just reply only to yourselves, we don't care. We're trying to make plans for the weekend, and I'm seeing like 4 exchanges about this baseball article nobody's read. So I'm like, okay, I started a blog spot, threw some thoughts in a post on that, gave him access. We had a couple other friends who were Jays fans. You know, it was in the days of, you know, the Toronto Star Pass, when you could, that really reignited my passion for the sport. Honestly, like we spoke about it at the start, but
Yeah.
you know, you could. I was a big movie guy when I first moved to Toronto. I was like, oh hey, because I grew up in Peterborough, moved to Toronto, and was like, oh man, I can go to the Cumberland, I can go to the Carlton, I can watch all these like films that I'm like kind of interested in a way that you definitely can't in a city that's much smaller. And then I just would end up watching so much garbage and paying for it, and realized at one point, like the cost of a movie pass, I can just go and watch a baseball game and sneak a Mickey of vodka in and have a nice little time for myself. Well, probably probably less than that, but nevertheless, yeah. And the Star Pass was like, you would pay $80 at the start of the year, and except for the home opener, you'd get a ticket to every game. It was such a weird, a different time. And I think that's a lot of like what our early stuff sort of spoke to, was this weird little hardcore fan base that actually still cared and actually loved baseball, and that sort of exploded. But yeah, I started a blog spot, gave out the password to some friends, and like it felt like 6 months later, where like people are talking about us in the Globe and Mail, and things started happening, and that's so I ended up at the Score. I ended up after that ended various other places, and it's just I've been very lucky that I've had an audience that sort of migrated with me, and that's sort of the new manifestation, is being on Substack with the Bat Flip.
Yeah, I was going to say, you built a loyal audience that loves your authenticity and unfiltered tone. What does that kind of connection with your readers mean to you versus, you know, maybe something in your earlier days career wise?
Yeah, it's great. It's really heartening. It's like you know, and I don't have to. This is good. I don't mean it this way, but I don't have to try too hard. Like I don't have to be really paywalling everything. I don't really have to grind to. It's just the way that I do Substack is different than a lot of people, where I don't really put stuff behind the paywall. I'm just like, hey, if you value this content, please pay. And then there's enough people who have the means to do that, and the desire to, you know, keep me doing what I'm doing, to pay it. And it's just I can't thank them enough, and it's a beautiful thing that it works that way, and I don't have to be like, well, you can't read this if I don't if you don't pay me. You know, it's that relationship isn't like that. And I like when I was at the Athletic for a while, when I moved there, I worried about what, you know, the consequences would be, you know, out the other side, because, you know, in a media job, you know that there's going to be an out the other side these days, you know, because that meant really going behind a paywall. And I'm fortunate that people they followed me there, and they continue to follow me and enable what I do at Substack. So it's been really cool, and it's, you know, it's yeah, you know, pick up new people along the way, but there's definitely a lot of people who remember me from the Blogspot days and from the Score days.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how do you find that you balance your creative freedom with the reality of making a living as an independent writer?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just do my thing. I am in a fortunate position that I can do that. I mean, we do a bit on, you know, yeah, it really is. And you know, we do a bit more of the business stuff. I do a podcast, Blue Jays Happy Hour, with Nick Ashbourne, who will often do, you know, the Jays talk stuff, which is kind of wild to come in, you know, from where I came from, listening to Mike Wilner doing you know, post game shows and stuff, and now I'm podcasting with Nick, who gets to do that and does stuff for Sportsnet. Yeah, like there's a bit more, you know, we have Patreon, we do have paywalled stuff, but a lot of the time I'm fortunate enough to not have to think too hard about the business stuff. You know, that that one day may have to change. You know, the media is a tricky business, and making any money at it is not always easy, but you know, but for now it's been very not challenging to be able to just say, here's what I'm offering, please pay me, and it kind of works. And yeah. I'm aware of how incredibly lucky I am, and like nobody really gets to do that.
Of course. And I feel like in this economy right now, we've had to pivot in many different directions as well. And to have the ability to kind of do your own thing is amazing. It's like you're able to kind of create your path and the way that you want to kind of work.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I don't know any other thing to do is the other thing. So that,
Yeah.
that makes it easy to just keep
I'm right
doing
there
it.
with you.
Yeah.
I want to break down not your latest post, but your 2025 post,
Okay.
and just talk about the Blue Jays and the World Series and how raw and emotional, and it was just so beautifully written.
Oh, thank you.
How did you approach finding the heart in that sports moment like you did?
Yeah, well, it took a few days because I was not ready to do that or reflect on it at that point. But yeah, I really honestly thank you. That's very nice, and I did it. That one felt good at coming out of the hand. Sometimes posts don't, and sometimes it's like you just you gotta put something out there anyway. But yeah, I mean that was just what I felt, and it really was. You can't. I think I wrote like there was no one more game to push it to, like in terms of the bitterness that everybody obviously felt. Um, you can't that was a complete season, even if for everybody. You sometimes feel, especially with your Blue Jays fan, you get to watch other teams play, or you have to watch other teams play as the season continues on, because you didn't make the playoffs or you got bounced early. And there was none of that. There was no thought about we could have won tomorrow if we just got that was it. There was a real finality to it. And I think I thought about that going in too, right? Like it's a Game 7 is just such a it's a lottery almost, right? And I mean there's a lot of randomness and stuff that goes into baseball itself, probably more than most other sports. But yeah, it was gosh, I don't know. That was just how I felt, and I thought I think you want to. I don't want to think too high and mighty about anything that I do. It is frivolous stuff, but the team really like put something special on display for everybody, that people really got into, and it was. I think I talked about loser talk and the corniness of it and all that, but it was the team just really meant something to people, and that's the good stuff, right? Like that's what we're here for, even if it didn't result in that one extra inch or whatever that would have taken the IKF play or whatever, whichever other one that will haunt my dreams for decades. It did. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I don't think. I mean, what matters was the journey, and that again, that's sort of like I'm listening to myself. I'm like, oh, really? Is that what you're saying? But yeah, it's true. That is what it is.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, being a sports fan, it's just there's nothing really like it. I mean, we talk about the joy and the heartbreak and just everything else in between. How do you write both without losing yourself in the authenticity and sounding cynical?
Oh, I think I sound cynical a lot. Like maybe not in that one. That was one where it had to come from the heart. It would have been weird to be cynical. I think the authenticity is sort of all I got. I think that goes hand in hand with the audience sticking around. Is that I'm being cynical sometimes, but I'm saying that I am, and just saying what I really think, and that's sort of been the thing for a long time. And as my thoughts have evolved, other people have kind of dropped away when they maybe don't agree with what I think anymore. But that's always sort of been at the core of it. I don't know how to do it any way else, really. I guess I would say.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What I think about when I go into a post, I don't have an end goal in mind. I just sort of that's just sort of my writing process. I'm fortunate, I think, to be able to. It's in there somewhere, but I'm not super cognizant of where it's going or what it's going to end up looking like, and just sort of shape it as it all flows out.
When you talk about your writing process, do you think that sports writing today leaves enough room for that kind of vulnerability?
Not often, I don't think.
Mm.
Like it's and what I do is and people respond to it. I mean, it's not like I don't have the biggest audience in the world, but people are loyal and appreciate it enough that they do respond to it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's going to be if you want to think of it in business terms, that's going to be an advantage in the coming like AI inspired sports writing stuff. That's to actually have a human voice behind it. I think is going to be more and more important. I hope that's not why I do it. I just do it because that's the only way I know how. But yeah, and some people don't need that. Some people are happy enough to read a gamer that looks like every other and sort of gets the basic facts down. But that stuff is sort of falling by the wayside too. I mean, you can just watch a clip on your phone. Like you don't necessarily need to read about what happened in the game that you already watched or that you can digest in a second. So I'm in a good place, I feel, in terms of trying to harness something else about the experience.
I mean, you speak about AI too. I just want to get your take on like your thoughts on like what is changing. Like when you speak about the human behind the article, are we getting lost in AI now based on what we are reading, what we're seeing?
I mean, I don't think so yet. I'm not going to claim to have any insight into how it's going to go, but like right now, it's still obvious. You'll see, Zombie Newsweek will be reposting something from another zombie site where it's like it has a person's name on it, but you're like, there's no way a person wrote this. But those are things where like that I encounter that stuff where I'm like, I need to remember this quote that somebody, that a player said back in August. Like I'm Googling for that where and oftentimes like you see a lot of that slop will start pointing you to where you can actually find the source, and it's sort of a project to drill down and actually find where the actual quote is. Which I feel I think is important. Sometimes you see, especially I came from the fan blog world and didn't go to journalism school, didn't have any formal training in that, but I think there are some things that should be obvious that aren't to everybody, it turns out, which is like sourcing and making sure you give credit and all that stuff. But yeah, so I see a lot of that slop that happens, and obviously, I mean, if it wasn't making money, or it probably cost them pennies, and they probably get whatever ad revenue off it, and the business model says that's fine. I'm not super worried yet that there's going to be an exodus of writers. Well, I mean, there already has been for non-AI reasons, but I think that I don't think it's going to be able to replicate, what it is to have a human behind the keyboard, and also that the people don't want that anyway. I mean, some of that stuff to expand beyond even just like my job and what, people are like, oh, well, movies are dead. Look, I can create a sitcom from the 90s that nobody would ever watch. Like I don't know. There are tools that you could create. Yeah, sure. You can write a sports article pretty easily. With AI right now, you can put in a few inputs and get some sort of facsimile that's just completely valueless. Like nobody would ever want to. That's not the point of reading something or watching something. Is to just be fed slop. I don't know. I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but I'm not super concerned about it yet. I don't have that many years to go anyway. Maybe give it 20 years and maybe it'll be a bigger concern. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and it's interesting to watch the world change around that slop. Though, who knows when the bubble is going to burst? It feels like it's sort of around the corner all the time.
Right? All the time. You've covered the Jays through their ups and their downs and rebuilds as well. What do you think made this season feel so different from the others?
It's a great question. I mean, winning is obviously a huge component of it. But yeah, I think it does feel like it. I think Mark Shapiro said this the other day. It's like fans love winning, but it was a different thing to watch a team win with such a likable group, with a group that played the way that they did. I think people, you've seen changes in baseball. The eliminating of the shift, stuff to move the pace of the game along, but also to like improve, to see more batted balls, to see more balls in play. And the Blue Jays were, they did that. That was their strength, was that they didn't strike out, which everybody hates. Unless you're the pitcher, you don't strikeouts aren't super fun to watch necessarily, unless you're really, really attuned to a guy's repertoire and what he's trying to do to hitters, which many people can be, but I not always. And yeah, you want to see the ball in play, you want to see action on the field, and that was kind of a fun thing. And then just I think the cast of characters too, and the way that they really cared about each other. We didn't necessarily always see that throughout the year. I think it would be disingenuous to say that we felt the same way about this team in June that we do now, and those guys and the way they came together. I mean, a lot of it is about October, honestly, and it was a great year. I think I'm definitely helped by the fact that Vlad got signed and that cloud was lifted.
Yes.
Like I talked about, I tried not to, but I've been talking about that for 5 years. It feels like on various podcasts. Like that if you start forecasting out too far from where the Jays were at any point along that continuum, you get to the point where if Vlad's not signed, the dark ages happen. You go back into the rebuilding years. There's no sense in not pushing the reset button, especially like Vlad and Bodo, and it took forever for them to get to that point to sign him. And then when they did, it's like, okay, they're like, by their own admission, they have to try to be competitive for many, many years. It would make no sense to pay a guy like this if you're not really going to do it. And that commitment has been really tough to see. It's been better, obviously, in the Shapiro era, the commitment from Rogers, part of that being the collective bargaining agreement that sort of changed revenue sharing and didn't allow the Blue Jays to take in revenue sharing money. It based it again. It shifted what revenue sharing was based on and made it about market size. So it was basically like Toronto, you can never say you're a small market team that would receive revenue sharing because it's just such a big city, such a big market. TV market's enormous. It's the whole country. So they kind of had to change their business model. So I try to point that out anytime this comes up because I don't want it to feel like Shapiro just talked Edward Rogers into being a benevolent billionaire who wants to have a great baseball team, which, I mean, there's some element of that, but it is important, I think, to remember that they're kind of compelled by the structural changes behind the scenes. But before that situation, we think back to Jays players have it like I'm forgetting which free agent it was, but they like Jose Bautista and guys in that era offering to change their contracts to get a free agent in. It was just the payroll parameters and just a completely different way of thinking about how the Blue Jays operated, and it was really easy to get cynical about Rogers and their stewardship of the team. And then you get to the point where they're paying Vlad $500 million. And it's like it's a sea change. It's just enormous, and that's why I point out it's not a benevolent billionaire thing, but it is a huge, enormous like change to just how they operate and what they think has to be done in order to make this the business they want it to be. And that just lifted a cloud that had been hanging over, in the back of everybody's mind, in the back of every discussion about the future of the Blue Jays for years. It was just very clear that would. If Vlad goes to free agency and doesn't come back, where are they? What do they do? I mean, it's weird because it's such a, there's so many guys on a roster. It's never about one guy, but it kind of was. And the fact that they hit that, I think, is what unlocked, a lot of things that were really good about this season and kind of allowed us to be at that point. Because, if he was going to free agency right now, even with what just happened, you're kind of like, well, if no one takes their money, where are they? That he's so central to everything they do. And I think they were really proven, the passion that he showed in the playoffs and the emotion and just the performance that he had on the field. I think that was pretty instantly rewarding for them that they picked the right horse. Like what a guy. And I think people didn't necessarily think that about him even a few months ago, really.
So right. What a guy. Like, I remember him and this 2025 team, I think, restored my love for baseball again. It had been missing for years. And Vladdy, I remember after he had signed, I think this was in training camp, or he had told Hazel May something about how we're going to the World Series. So he knew, like, he was determined, right? Like, if I could find that clip again, it's somewhere out there. But what he brought to the city, he was like so embedded in it too. And like Mark Shapiro and everyone in the front office, I found a difference between them is they were going out there and they were searching for big name players who they felt could be a fit in Toronto. And that's huge because I feel like other Toronto organizations don't necessarily do that. Yes, we've seen that with Kawhi, but since then, where have it's either guys don't want to play in Toronto, and then there's that whole facade about, or it's just like, what's going to be compelling enough for them to win in Toronto.
Yeah, I think there's just also not that tradition. Like,
Yeah.
guys sign with the Dodgers, guys sign with the Yankees, partly because of their historic teams in one sense, but also because you're going to the playoffs every year. That's it's playoffs or bust. Like it's not a successful season unless you win everything for those kind of franchises. And the Blue Jays were, you can offer all the money you want, but a lot of times, that's what's compelling to these guys when all the offers on the table are pretty similar. Obviously the mid-tier guys don't have their pick, but those Otanis, those Juan Sotos, they like that, I think, is what ends up, driving those guys to those situations. Not everybody necessarily, but yeah. And they just have to build that. I don't think you can fake that. And I think that, that goes to, I mean, the Leafs try. I don't think too much about the Leafs, but I think the Raptors too. I mean, I think if the Raptors had a San Antonio Spurs in 20 years, then I think they would be easier to attract people to Toronto. I don't think it's necessarily the city or the country that holds people back. It's sort of like, well, what if I get stuck here? And they haven't shown that they know how to succeed or need that to succeed in that same way that a team like the Dodgers does. Obviously, there's a ton of money and everything baked into that too. But yeah, it's a great city, obviously, as we saw. So hopefully that will maybe change things. But yeah, having a guy like Vlad and being sure that he's going to be here for years and years is I think a compelling draw for a lot of guys, which hopefully will spur better things.
Does this mean there could be a possibility that we could get the next Japanese player over here?
I think it's entirely possible. I think it's totally possible. Yeah. I mean, how many roster spots do the Dodgers have? Yeah. I mean, Ohtani doesn't grow on trees. I mean, Yamamoto, we saw how great he was in the playoffs. I mean, Japanese baseball is just so fun to sort of watch from afar. I would love to. It's sort of a bucket list thing for me to go and see some of those stadiums and be in those environments. Really, it's very cool how more and more the game is becoming international. Especially at a time when the Blue Jays are doing what they're doing and are
Right?
on the big stage. Yeah.
It wasn't there a stat about like at least 1/3 of the Japanese population were watching the World Series too?
I think it was something like that. Yeah. Like the numbers were enormous. So if you combine U.S. and Canada and Japan,
Yes.
that was such a huge thing, and it was a classic series. I hate to say it because I hate it, and I never want to think about it again. But it really was. If you were a neutral, like that was theater. That really was incredible stuff.
I mean, as someone who's built the Bat Flip around the passion for this team and the game, how did this run re-energize what you want to write about next and just as you were writing?
It honestly really has. I mean, and then there were times where it's easy just to be a fan. I'm fortunate. This is another side of the I'm fortunate coin, is that I don't have an editor. I don't have somebody telling me we have to write about that game. That was, I get to do my own thing a lot. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of a season prior to this one where as soon as it ended, I'm thinking about, okay, what am I going to work on next week? What am I going to what's in the future? I want to keep this rolling. I want to keep doing it. But it is, those bad things were just looming for so long. The idea that it's going to be another rebuild, it's going to be, they may, especially I think after last season too, after 2024, where it just felt like the formula wasn't working, and it felt like Vlad was unsigned, and it felt like Bo was unsigned, and it looked just so easy that the house of cards would collapse in on itself, and there would be new people in the front office, a long rebuild process. And who knows what that entails? Who knows if they're going to be as convincing at getting the financial support as Shapiro has, even though, like I say, all the other stuff, the other factors are involved. It felt like it could go really badly. Really, it just would be grim for a few years, and I'm getting too old for grim for years. I don't. And it was tough to want to. To care as much as I had previously, or it ebbs and flows. I think for any fan too, when you're you follow a team for years and decades. There are periods where you're energized by it and periods where you're less energized by it. And what has happened over the last month, what's transpired this entire year has really, well, we can check back in the spring to see how much content I pumped out. But no, it just feels like it's just a real moment. It's a real moment where everybody still has a hint of that Jays fever that they had over the last month. And that makes me, much more eager to get up and do my job and write some fun things and think about the future and where it's all going.
I think I have worn this jersey out too. I mean, the amount of use that it had come into was incredibly crazy. I would even dress my son in his Blue Jays t-shirt as well. So what I would do was, this was game one, the day of the World Series. I went to my local grocery store and I was like, I'm just going to wear my jersey just to see if anyone says go Jays, right?
Right.
I mean, like, I live in Florida, right? Who is going to, come up and say that? I kid you not, I had like 3 people come up and
Amazing.
they were from Toronto, some part of the city. And I was like, okay, the camaraderie, the community, you are here to witness how amazing this was going to be. And then can you believe that I, this past weekend, ran into the same people and we were just reminiscing about how devastated we were about the outcome. But it's just amazing to see that Jays fans travel deep.
That's incredible. And they say that, but that's very cool to have like real evidence of that. And that's fun stuff. Like I think I wrote in that piece that you referred to, my 2025 piece, about like I have one of those old 80s jackets, that you'd see Cito Gaston kind of wearing. I never get to wear it. It's not my best fit. I feel it's maybe a little awkward sometimes. It's pretty, it's one of those silky ones and stuff, but it's and also, the time of year, the window to wear it. I think about jackets maybe more than I should, but the window to wear it is pretty short, right? It's like, it's right, like today here in Ontario, it's much too cold to wear that. And in late September, it was much too warm. It's a short window, and the inevitable time to wear it, for the number of years that I've had it, it's been like, I'm not putting a Jays logo. They just pulled Barrios in the 3rd inning. It's just, you're just so dispirited and disappointed in the team and I got to wear it for a month, and that was the same. It was the same experience. People, in places where you don't expect it, and people who you don't know, you didn't know were Blue Jays fans or didn't know cared, are saying, talking to you about the team and getting into it. And that was really a huge, cool part of the experience.
It was such a cool part. It was phenomenal. What do you think that this season taught you, not just about baseball, but about storytelling, the resilience, or even the fandom in itself?
Yeah, you know what? I for a long time sort of would always talk about, the narratives the people approach baseball with, that they sort of try to impose on teams oftentimes. And that's sort of some of the stuff that when I started out, like I mentioned, the Richard Griffin articles or whatever, shouts to Griff, but was stuff I would reject, where it's like, they're talking about a sport that has a ton of randomness in it, and sort of imposing the thoughts about like, oh, this guy knows how to do it when it counts, and stuff that a lot of the Moneyball stuff and the sabermetrics would say, oh no, that's not exactly how the world works. But this season was an interesting sort of corrective to that, in terms of the storytelling did make sense, and the story of the Blue Jays being a resilient team and a cohesive team, and playing for each other, and stuff that I would often probably not give too much time to. It was just so hard to not think that there's something to it, and it was a good reminder to a cynical person like myself about that sort of stuff, that yeah, there is something to it, because it's just, you couldn't not see it, right? It was in front of your face how much they wanted to win for each other, and how much they had that in them to be resilient. And maybe it was more random, maybe that is sort of taking a narrative and trying to impose it on a team, but it felt like that's really what it was, and that makes the storytelling that much more compelling, and probably easier to do too and it's certainly more fun than just sort of downplaying anything sort of romantic about it and being like, well,
Yeah.
here's what the numbers say. It says we're just rolling dice here until we get to the end of the World Series, and that's just not quite true. It's not. There's a little of it, but yeah, we really saw something in terms of the human side of it and the intangible side of it that I've always been a little more suspicious of than maybe I should.
No, I mean, that what kind of pulls at my heartstrings to that the human element to it, like how it's a lot of times bigger than baseball, but at the same time, you kind of come back to it and you're just like immersed within it. You describe the baseball gods teasing and taunting fans.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like to translate that collective heartbreak into words right after it happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was powered by what we all saw, I think, but also it was about, and everybody, maybe not everybody, but I know a lot of people, you'll have group chats, and there's always like the angry guy who I feel I'm not naming names. I don't think my friends will be watching this necessarily anyway, but like, people you have who are just like, baseball, but it isn't built for them, or they're not built for it, where everything's somebody's fault, everything's a disaster that doesn't end up in winning, everything is it's just people. That was sort of, and I think I had a line about that in the piece too, but like, how do you get mad about a team that got to the 11th inning of the 7th game of the World Series for being bad at baseball? Like they clearly weren't bad at baseball. So I don't understand where any anger or there necessarily bitterness over the outcome, but like bitterness over pitch selection, or which reliever went where, or who had enough of a secondary lead, or who gave up the home run to a guy who shouldn't be hitting home runs off you. It's all of that stuff. It's like, I just don't understand, looking back on that season, especially right afterwards, and having anger about it. That was just sort of a lot of the motivation for what I was saying, because it was not a point where there are sometimes in sports times to be angry. It does run the gamut of emotions, but like, that for me, and that's sort of what I wanted to put out into the world, was that it wasn't a moment to be angry. It was a moment to really think about what an incredible ride it was, because that's what it is. And like I said before, there was no next game to play. There was no next inning to play where you could get it right. It was just, they went to the bitter end and beyond. And, somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. And that sucks that it wasn't them that won, but it was a great trip. And, I would take it 1,000 times out of 1,000. I would do that again in a minute.
I know they say there's no crying in baseball, but I had a box of tissues, and my son, when I
No
told him the
doubt.
next day, oh God, he was bawling in tears just after finding out the outcome. So finding ways to console him was a challenge.
No doubt. Yeah. It was
Um,
tough.
it was so tough. It was so tough. What do you think of Blue Jays fans and Toronto sports fans in general? It's such a unique audience to write for.
It
Would you say?
absolutely is. Yeah, it absolutely is. There's a lot. I mean, I haven't experienced writing for other fan bases, but it's such an enormous audience. We take that for granted sometimes, but like, you look at, the Yankees are obviously an enormous team, huge market. But if you look at like the number of households that are watching those games, like the American TV ratings are maybe different. Like there's a little apples to oranges there, but like just the sheer number of people that are watching day in, day out in the Blue Jays is incredible. It's the sports culture is really ingrained here, and I think in a way that's maybe not the same in other places, in other markets. And yeah, while we were talking, the fans of differing degrees of the different teams, but there is sort of a huge unifying thing about it. And it's I wrote earlier in the season, I don't like the loser Leafs Toronto sports. Oh, well, that's just what Toronto sports is. You're going to lose. It's going to be heartbreak. And it's like, yeah, the
Yeah,
Raptors won in 2019. Like, I
exactly.
think you kind of, I think I call it chauvinism. It's like the Leafs people think that their experience is the same as everybody's. I don't need to like get into petty gripes about that, but there are different, it's a fabric. It's not a monolith, right? The way that everybody watches it, but it is it is an amazing and passionate fan base, and it's cool to be a part of it. I also think maybe part of it is that it's unlike a lot of American cities in particular. Like it all happens like downtown. It all happens right at the center of the city. It's not, you don't have to go out to some far flung borough to go and see the stuff, and it's all really, it's part of, what people think of Toronto, which is probably, the old city for a lot of the time, which is problematic in other ways, but it does sort of make it, just part of the heartbeat of the city.
And one thing that was cool too, I know, when I was watching the American broadcast, they were referencing, and players as well, was like, this baseball team is one team for our whole country, and so I think there's so much more to play for when you're talking about the whole country. And what gets me every time is when the Canadians always belt the national anthem before every game. And it's just, whether they were in Dodger Stadium or back home at Rogers Center, it always gave me goosebumps. And it made me think back to when watching the Raptors, and their championship run. And it's just, it's so loving and caring that, just kind of brings the whole nation together.
Yeah, that is definitely, it's very cool, and yeah, the goosebump moments are really cool. Some of it is maybe that we got a bit of an inferiority complex, but that's okay. That's sort of it happens in a charming way. But yeah, the nation thing, I get cynical about that. Speaking of cynical stuff, like I roll my eyes sometimes when because you just hear it's very ingrained about playing for a nation when you think about when you hear from Shapiro or players, it's that they always reference it, and I'm like, is that just part of me is like, is this just a marketing thing? But you think about it, it really is true. You have the Yankees and the Mets share the same city, and you go an hour away and nobody would spit on you if you're a Yankee. They must, players must feel that obviously in a different way than we do here, where it's just like, yeah, of course the Blue Jays, guys are projecting Game 7 on a grain silo in Saskatchewan, right? Like and I think the Expos have been gone for so long that we've sort of memory hold that thing. And I mean, the Expos were gone basically before they were gone too for so many years, or they were irrelevant. But and also back then, that was the AL NL divide was, I think, a little bit made it a little bit different too, because you could have an AL team and an NL team. But anyway, it is. I mean, I'm sure that it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, I'm talking about playing for a whole country, but like it's a huge territory that, like, obviously you can go anywhere here, and there are Blue Jays fans, and that isn't true of other teams. It really, even if it's not, in terms of population, that much different than, maybe being a Giants fan, or there are teams that have huge fan bases. The Cardinals have a big one, but it must be different. Of course, it's different. I just sometimes I'm like, I don't know, because
I know.
And I think Toronto people understandably kind of are like, well, no, it's our team. You guys can come along, but it's kind of ours though, right? Like, that it's the Toronto team, but it is cool. It's very cool to think, what else? Where else would you see, like, what other part of life would you see Vancouver people wearing Blue Jays hats, or Blue Jays hats, and people appreciating Toronto in literally any other city in the country? I mean, it's usually just such an antagonistic feeling.
I didn't even know Vancouver had a minor league team until they were talking about Trey Savage coming from there and working his way to the Blue Jays.
That has been, I mean, and that's sort of where I talk about it being a marketing thing too. Like, but they've done a great job. Buffalo, that wasn't their AAA team for a long time. And Vancouver was not part of their organization for a long time, and they've sort of brought them into the fold. So that, if you live in Vancouver, Nat Bailey Stadium is a beautiful stadium. You can go watch, to this year, you could have watched Trey Savage. I don't think he made too many starts there because he was just on that crazy trajectory up to the big leagues. But like, you'll see future Blue Jays playing in Vancouver. Buffalo is is a great example. That's been a concerted effort for them, and it's been a winner, and it does sort of fold into the whole thing about the playing for an entire country.
Exactly. It totally does. Andrew, I want to ask you, as a piece of advice that you would have for other writers who are thinking about creating their own Substack or going independent, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, going independent, I mean, not a choice that I necessarily made for myself,
True.
but like that's a thing that happens. It's been really rewarding to know that there are people out there who do it, or who are interested in and still hearing what I say, and it's been really nice to not have to, find something else to do. I mean, advice wise, it's tough because I'm just in such a lucky position. Like I came around at the right time. I had that job that I was talking about earlier where I had enough time in my day where I could, do something creative and do something as a hobby as intense, as labor intensive as like writing about uncovering a baseball team. I don't think that, that's just not an easy work environment to find yourself in. And it took a lot of my life, because after work I was still doing it.
Yeah.
And that's easy when it's, it pays off, and when the audience, showed up really quickly, and when things started happening. So, I don't know about that, but my general advice, like in anything creative, like I played in a band for years and it didn't go anywhere, but we had fun doing that too. And that took a lot of and it was just like, I don't know, put something into the world that you want to see yourself. I always, think about people sort of following, wanting to capture a trend or wanting to capture something, financially, or do something, you want to, like in terms of like playing music. We want to impress the people at this record label. I don't think that's how the industry works anymore, but you want to get opportunities by impressing the right people, where I would advise, don't worry about that, and just put something into the world that you want to see there, that you think needs to be there, is missing, or a voice that's missing. And that's sort of a guiding principle.
And as people read your articles and listen to your podcast, what do you hope that they take away from your work?
Oh man, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever hoped anybody takes any. I hope that I hope they appreciate the way that it slices through other commentary, and hopefully has a perspective that is authentic, and that is just different, and is something that is important, and you need to hear to really understand the Toronto Blue Jays, I guess, or any subject that I'm writing about, that in a way that you maybe won't hear anywhere else. And it's people get weird about like Sportsnet guys, and everybody had like they're the teams telling them, shaping their coverage. I don't think that's true, but being independent, I think, is a really important thing. There's very few people who kind of independently can just say what they want about this team or anything, and have an audience there to respond to it. And I appreciate that. I take that challenge, and I appreciate that, and hope that people know that I hope they know that it's sort of not unique, or it's unique not just to the Blue Jays, but unique to hopefully a lot of other sports fan experiences too. I mean, they don't not every team has what we have, and not just me, but there are lots of other great independent creators who are passionate about it, and have really good perspectives on it. And I'm just happy to be one of those.
Most definitely. Well, this has been so cathartic for me to, release all of the emotions that I was feeling with this 2025 Blue Jays team. So I truly appreciate you coming on to kind of share it all with us and take us through memory lane now.
Yeah, a lot of memories that'll last. Some of them good. Trying to hang on to the good ones, but again, my dreams will be haunted for a long time by that Game 7. But no, it's been really fun to chat, and happy to do it, and I would do it anytime.
Thank you so much.
I hope this episode allows you to be at peace with the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays and provides some hope for what the future looks like in 2026. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share it with a friend. Until next time, I'm Payal, and I'll see you again. Take care.